What have been the biggest challenges facing these businesses that you've seen, and what have you done to help them?
Well, it's so our response has evolved over time, but in the early days of the pandemic, of course, none of us in public office or elsewhere had a full grip of what we were facing, right? We hadn't had a pandemic since 1918, and so we really didn't know what was unfolding and what the threats were. But as we started to learn a little bit more about COVID-19, we understood that we had to sort of break through certain perceptions in order to enable small businesses to continue to move forward, to stabilize. Like in the first month of the pandemic, our unemployment rate here in New Bedford went from about 5% to about 24%. Right? Businesses shut down, and this wasn't by virtue of any government orders at all. People didn't want to go into restaurants and shops and so forth. And so, my job as mayor, and to a great degree, was to ensure that the public understood that it was okay to go in and order from a takeout pizza joint, for instance. And so I would really within the first 2 weeks of the arrival of the pandemic, I was going around the city, mask on and all, but showing up at places and ordering out and posting it on social media so that everybody understood it was okay to do that. And then we took extra steps in terms of, literally using city departments to build out sidewalks to offer so that restaurants could offer up uh, outdoor dining. New Bedford, of course, has a big fishing industry. We're the largest fishing port in America. We took a number of steps to ensure that that boats could go out safely during the early part of the pandemic, and helping crews social distance and to take other precautionary measures. So it was initially a big scramble, right? But then other things started to set in, right? So there were social distancing measures in place, and there were, mask requirements and so forth here, as there were just about everywhere else, at least in the early going. And so people needed to understand that folks were still open for business. And again, the social media activity was important in that regard. But we also understood that so many businesses were losing employees, and that it was actually safe to work in a number of these in all the small businesses that we were trying to stabilize. And then as time went on, we saw the effects of still greater staffing shortages and inflation. And so helping small businesses with working capital was a big part of what we attempted to do through loans and sort of grant programs that we can go into a little more detail about. But suffice it to say, stabilizing our small businesses required us to work very, very closely with them, to have an understanding of what their challenges were, and to try with the resources that we're getting from the federal government, the state government, and our own resources to ensure that they could pay the bills, they could hire folks up, that they could pay all their vendors, that they could keep the lights on literally in their businesses. And so, it was an iterative process along the way. The goal really was stabilization and then get businesses back on a pathway of growth.